Hello, my name is Dr. Shiva Pillai and I'm making this submission on the urgent need for electoral reform in South Africa. The Constitutional Reform Committee has called for submissions and this is my submission. I'm making this video to encourage all South Africans to make submissions to the Constitutional Reform Committee as there is an urgent need and rectification needed for our current electoral system. Our current electoral system is not representative of the people. And if we say the people shall govern, as the Freedom Charter said, then we should have the ability to elect representatives that are accountable to us. The current system is flawed and it needs to be reformed. At the heart of democracy is the simple principle, the people shall govern. This means that people must be able to hold their representatives accountable. Today I want to explain why our current systems fall short of that principle and why we need to fix it. And this is urgent. In a true democracy, people vote and elect their representatives. And in this process, they know whom their representatives are. They have the ability to contact their representatives. They have the ability to hold their representatives accountable. And if their representative is not performing properly and is not representing them properly, they should have the ability to replace that representatives. Accountability should flow from representatives to the public and the citizens and not to a political party. In the current day and age, if you ask 10 South Africans or any South African today, who is your member of parliament or who is your member of legislature, they will not know. That's because they didn't elect these people directly. And the current system where the speaker arbitrarily allocates people, those people are not accountable to the citizens. And hence today, most people in South Africa do not have representation or direct representation in parliament or in the legislature. And most citizens are not able to identify who their representatives are. And this is a flaw in our current electoral system that needs to be corrected. And therefore I am making this submission. South Africa currently uses a closed list proportional representation system where citizens vote for political parties and not individual representatives. While this system ensures proportional representation, it has created serious unintended consequences. Voters vote for political parties. The parties make a list, and that list then decides who goes to parliament. In this system, members of parliament are accountable primarily to the party leadership and not the people, because it's the party leadership that decides who will go to parliament. And hence I state that communities have no direct members of parliament or members of legislature, and they cannot approach these members of parliament or legislature with their local concerns. Most people do not even know who their members of parliament or the members of the legislature are. And if they have concerns, they do not know where to raise this. As a result, today accountability flows upwards towards political party structures instead of downwards to the citizens. This weakens responsiveness, it undermines representation, and distances government from the people. If we want a true democracy where our elected representatives are accountable to the people, we need electoral reform. And that's what this submission is trying to achieve. We have an accountability gap now. And what is missing? Everybody knows that if you have a problem in your ward, you can approach your ward councillor because your ward councillor represents its community. But if you have a problem with something that is run by Parliament or the legislature, which is the majority of the things that is run in government today, do you know whom to go to? I want to put a proposition that the community has no dedicated member of parliament and they have no dedicated member of provincial legislature. And this controls the bulk of the services that citizens receive today, whether it's education, health, housing, security. All this is controlled by parliament and the legislature. And yet we have no direct representatives that we can hold accountable or that we can elect to this structure. If every community has a councillor, then why doesn't every community have its own member of parliament and own member of legislature? This is a simple question. This is a simple reform, and this is supposed to have been enacted more than 2 decades ago, and it has not been done. The system adopted in 1994 was not meant to be a permanent structure. It was a temporary mechanism to ensure inclusivity and stability. It was never intended to be permanent. Hence, my core proposal is that South Africa urgently transition to a mixed member proportional representation system. This system will then allow 50% of our members of parliament and members of legislature to be directly elected by the people and 50% be elected through a proportional representation system. This will ensure that there is fair representation, and it will also ensure the constitutional requirement of proportionality. But it will add something more. It will add direct accountability. It will add direct local representation, and it will strengthen democracy further by bringing democracy closer to the people. And in this way, you'll have a more balanced parliament and you'll have a balanced legislature, unlike the one that we have today. Now, this is not a new idea. It was recommended more than 2 decades ago in 2003 by the Frederick van Zyl Electoral Task Team. This was a task team that was set up by government to look at reform, but it was never implemented. In simple terms, the system works as follows, just similar to the local government elections. A proportion of your members of parliament are directly elected from constituencies, and the remaining members are drawn from a proportional representation list of a political party. We know how to do this in local governments, yet we do not want to implement the same thing in our National Assembly nor in our provincial legislatures. Why? If you look at the recommendations that was made, the Van Zyl Commission had a majority view. It had eminent people in that committee, made up of retired judges, legal experts, members of parliament, and everybody. And it was a committee set up by government to look at electoral reforms. And yet, despite a majority vote to adopt that system, the minority view decided to continue with the current system. Now, when this was challenged in the Constitutional Court by people stating that they cannot stand as individual representatives of communities because they do not belong to a political party and cannot stand as independent candidates, we all hoped that the electoral reforms that was proposed will be adopted. But instead, they only amended the Electoral Act to allow individuals to stand in the election, but did not go further in ensuring proportional representation. Why? It cannot be expected that the same parliament will vote on a system that will make it more difficult for them to go into parliament. They have a vested interest in keeping the current system the way it is, because in this system they are not accountable directly to communities. And hence it cannot be that we must rely totally on Parliament to make these changes. And hence my submission to the Constitutional Reform Committee is that the process must be changed. We must have time-bound constitutional reform, and Parliament must be required to debate and vote on an electoral reform system within a defined framework. We have already postponed this reform for more than 2 decades, and the delay now is no longer acceptable. We should not be allowing Parliament to totally control this process. We should recommend that an independent constitutional commission be established to drive the process, and that Parliament cannot be the sole decision maker on a system that directly affects its composition. It's a plain, simple conflict of interest. Everybody understands this. And therefore we should have mandatory public participation, and the reform process must be extensive and meaningful with public consultation, such that we can get a system, an electoral system that derives legitimacy from the people. Their voices must be heard so that their voices shape the future direction in which elections are held. We should have electoral reform that includes public participation, such that we have constituency representation, and that way we will have an accountable parliament and will have an accountable legislature. If one questions the constitutionality of this proposal, then I wish to state that this proposal is grounded in the Constitution itself. Section 1D of our Constitution commits South Africa to ensure that there is proportional representation, but it also requests that the government must have elections and have a system that is accountable, that is responsive, and that is open. While our current system delivers proportionality, it does not fully realize accountability. And if we have to satisfy that constitutional requirement of accountability, then reform is not only desirable, it can be arguably be made a constitutional necessity. Now, taking into consideration that our current system was supposed to be temporary, and that the electoral system was supposed to have been reformed more than 2 decades ago, that an eminent commission was set up to do the reform, but Parliament refused to implement what the suggestions was because of their own vested interest. We can no longer rely on Parliament to do this. And therefore the system that we are proposing now is that the Constitutional Reform Committee must make time-bound proposals and include a process of public participation, such that the process is not solely left to the current politicians to make change. When we say the people shall govern, it doesn't mean to say that the people shall govern every 5 years when we elect. It means the people shall govern every day when we hold our public representatives accountable. And that can only happen if we have the ability to directly elect public representatives to the National Assembly and to the provincial legislature. The people shall govern cannot simply mean voting once every 5 years. That does not ensure accountability. It must mean that you have a representative that you can contact, someone who knows your community, someone who is accountable to you. South Africa has achieved proportional representation. Now we must complete the journey by restoring direct accountability to the people. This can no longer be delayed. I've attached here Parliament's Constitutional Reform Review Committee and whom to contact. I want to urge communities and individuals to please make submission. The closing date is the 6th of July. The email address is provided. If you do not act now, do not expect that the current crop of parliamentarians will make changes that will make a government more accountable to you. We have to stand up and claim our right. This video is being made so that we can claim our rights back. So I am urging you to make your submission and make a difference. Thank you.